Good morning, teachers. Thank you for joining me for this event today. So let's begin. So writing is a process approach. Why writing needs to be taught sequentially from the generation of ideas to the submission of a final product. This is going to be divided into sections. Firstly, we're going to be looking at the CAPS documents in the writing process. We as teachers are often taught that reading is one of the main and most important sources of input, but this is not true. According to the CAPS documents, good writing is a skill that needs to be developed and supported. And this is as important as practicing improves your learner's ability to think more about their writing styles, grammar, and spelling. In the senior phase, learners are required to be independent writers who can produce texts that are correct, easy to read, and interesting. So how can we as teachers help our senior phase learners to do this? So the writing process and the strategies. Writing is an ever-developing skill that needs to be reworked and fine-tuned often so that it can ultimately become an automatic progression of work and becomes easier to complete as the skill improves. The process has these steps. Firstly, we have planning or pre-writing. This is the preparation for writing. To analyze the chosen text style, for the learners to try and understand the reader or their audience and the purpose of their text, to discuss and brainstorm ideas about the format, styles, and views, and to find resources, be they paper or digital. This part to me is a really integral space and an important part of the whole process, because like we said, it's the preparation for writing, and your learners will be needing you to help facilitate them, especially with that resource component. You can do many things. You can go to the library, allow them to search digitally, have various resources within your classroom that can help them. Newspapers, magazines, books, anything that you can. Secondly, there's drafting or composing, and this is the starting to write, the putting ideas to paper, working on the points of view and finding your own voice. It's really important to show learners the many types of ways to do this so that they can find their own way. Next, we have the revising. And at this stage, learners must begin refining the drafts by putting in and taking out written aspects and working to improve their written piece. It importantly goes hand in hand with drafting. And like we said, it's really necessary for learners to read their own work. It's with this reading that they'll get a better understanding of what they're doing. Next, we have the editing and proofreading. So the learners, with assistance from teachers and fellow learners, complete the checking of their spelling, improve their grammar, format changes in paragraphs, and the likes. If your learner is struggling, you need to help to provide strategies continuously so that independence in this area can be achieved. Finally, there's presenting. So once all the above steps have been implemented and completed, the learners are ready to finalize and present their work for marking. What's important about this presenting is not just a written piece of paper. It's not just a piece of work for them. This is something they've really tried hard at. You can actually even do things like publish their work. There's so many ways that you can publish it on the internet. I read somewhere that you can have a writing wall where children can put up their work. You can publish it in a school newspaper or a school article, a school magazine, all different aspects like that. The most important thing for me here is to tell you that this process is not a cut and dry one, and it lends itself to changes depending on the written task at hand. Let's now look at the differences between essays and transactional writing. So essays are written pieces that usually express the writer's opinion or interest. At a school level, we have 6 types of essays. We have a narrative essay, which discusses sequential events in a meaningful order and an understandable manner. We have descriptive essays, and as the name implies, it's rich, meaningful writing used to help form a picture in the mind's eyes. If you think of a film, this does it visually. A descriptive essay will do this through the language used. We have argumentative essays, where your learner is expected to write an opinion for or against the topic. We have discursive essays, which is a planned piece of writing, making use of objectivity and reasonableness in the arguing of a point. And this leads to knowing exactly what the writer has intended to convey. We have reflective essays, which are strongly emotive and personal pieces of writing, and they're quite reflective of the writer's feelings at the time. These can either be quite serious or humorous in nature. Finally, we have expository essays, and these are mainly used to further enrich a topic and to explain things in a systematic order and to help provide clarity. We carry on looking at this now. We have transactional texts, and these are the types of writing that must be learned for later use in life. And this is even entering into the FET phase and thereafter. So some of these examples can be taught at a school level. It's really important that learners still know how to write a formal or informal letter. Even though technology has overtaken and many emails are sent nowadays instead of actual handwritten letters, it's such an important skill to practice and to know. Writing down an agenda or taking minutes in a meeting. And these are really useful and should be appropriate for the learner's context. So for example, if there's a meeting about a play that's happening at the school, a drama, if there's a meeting in the student council, somebody should be allocated to take the meeting minutes and also another person to actually write down the agenda so they know exactly what points are going to be discussed and how it was discussed. Speeches. These are adapted pieces of writing for a range of topics and again can also be quite emotive and range from serious to funny. Emails links a lot to that formal and informal letter, and it's how we write an appropriate email with the correct etiquette. Now, it's a funny concept, but when you're looking at that etiquette on technology, you have to teach your learners that you can't write in slang. Grammar is still important, spelling is still important, all these things which need to be done. It's also how to conduct an interview or write a report on something, filling in forms. Our learners are going into the senior phase, from the senior phase into the FET phase, and they're actually going to have to know how to fill in forms correctly, what choices they're going to be making further when they have subject choices, how to apply for their driver's license, how to apply for their ID card. All these things need forms to be filled in. Things like filling in and making your curriculum vitae or your CV. Having a diary entry, something you could do daily with your learners, giving them 5 minutes to just write down what they can do. Having tasks that are giving instructions or directions to follow. And even something fun like creating an advert or a poster is really, really important. I'd like to give an example of someone that I really found quite fascinating when I looked into this assignment. And this is actually J.K. Rowling. As many of you know, she's the author of the Harry Potter books, and she's actually also has a pseudonym. She's written a few books without her name because she wanted to see if that could work as well. And in this example of a discursive essay, what was really interesting for me is that it wasn't originally an essay, but it was actually a speech that she was asked to read at Harvard University. And she later published this as an essay titled Very Good Lives, The Fringe Benefits of Failure and the Importance of Imagination. Now I know what you're thinking. Harvard is university level, it's much higher than what our students are, but I don't believe that. I believe that the message behind it is good and that it's not to be afraid of trying. Even when you rock bottom, you carry on trying and you do what you want to do. The process approach that was implemented here is done through the way in which she originally wrote this as a speech, as I said, and then she reworked it as an essay. So it proves that her work was one of process. So even as an accomplished author, she revised her work, she re-edited it, and she republished it in order to change its format. So here she shows that the process to writing is an advantageous one. because also she's managed to publish it as a book and sell it. Again, with the same author, but now a transactional text, we can see that the writing process was followed when making her speech. So this is something we have to teach our learners as well, how to make a speech. And the following was noted. If you have time to watch this video, it's really amazing and I would recommend it. She really paid careful attention to who her audience was and how they would react to her, which was part of her planning. She made use of witty comments, often reflected to her own life story, as well as successful novels. There's in particular a wizard joke, and she used that as familiar examples. Pretty sure this was done during her drafting and composing section of process. Her formatting changes for her delivery with sentences and her paragraphs, this was in her editing. She made use of changing her tone, especially when making a joke, but she continued to keep an even pace and audibility, and that's in her presenting or her final publishing of her work. She balanced the positive and the negative in the points that she provided. Again, this was in the drafting or composing as well as the revising of her speech. And her final part in presenting was the use of visual aids. It is important. We all need them. We all get nervous at times, and it's just a safety net to have a look at our cards. But what is important, and something we need to teach our learners, is to speak first. So now, if we look at the advantages and the benefits of using the process approach, according to Ralph, the benefits can be noted as writing is a real-time activity. It's something you can do any part of your lesson straight away in the moment. Learner skills are developed as the process takes place. So practicing is the most influential aspect. Practice makes perfect in this. It's a learner-centered and driven task. It's so important to get our learners buy-in. The disadvantages of using this approach is that because it's mostly a learner-centered approach, tasks tend to lend themselves to creative writing approaches. And this is something we really need to mix up as teachers. Secondly, assumption is made that the process has to be followed for all writing tasks, which is not true. Finally, learners can be disadvantaged if they don't practice writing and learning to write the different types of written text. And it's something we really need to take into account. Now, I have some questions for you. It's just 3, and I'd like you to take a moment and think about it before jotting down your answers. My first question is, how can we, as teachers, enhance this practicing? Secondly, what can examples of a supportive writing environment be? And thirdly, list 5 ways in which you could encourage the pre-writing or pre-planning stage within your classroom. If you'd like some more information, there's really a lot that you can find, especially in our teaching language book. Great fans of that. But thank you so much for your time. I really hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I look forward to hearing